Welcome to The Right Idea, where we discuss the people, policy, and politics that move Texas. I'm your host, Derek Cohen. I'm the Chief Research Officer here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. Not joining me today is Brian Phillips, who unfortunately could not escape his DPS escort. I am here today, however, with the Lindsey Buckingham of conservative policy arguments, Andrew Brown. Andrew, thanks for joining the show.
Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
All right. So I assume you saw last night the governor expanded the call of the special session. So it included water material, which I'm sure we'll talk about today. But also, I don't know if you saw, he also added legislation to impose penalties and punishments for legislators who are willfully absent from a session, perhaps to even supersede the civil penalties already in place. So, Andrew, let me ask you, if there was something that you could pick to be a crime that is currently not a crime, what would you pick?
I think the absolutely horrific things that the youths are doing to the English language, I'm talking skibbity, Riz, Ohio. As we all know, Ohio is a terrible state, not an adjective.
We can edit this out in post.
But yeah, I think that should be a crime.
I'm not going to push back on you. See, I was kind of in the same ballpark with Crocs with socks. And I've actually heard, and I've heard people say that, like, well, an affirmative defense will say to that is, they were in sport mode. You know, they had the little flap to the back. Right. That makes no sense to me, but
it defeats the purpose of the holes.
Yeah, exactly. Which, you know, look, I'm no aerodynamicist, but you would assume those holes would introduce drag to begin with. So why would you even have a sport mode?
I think
so. We'll deal with this later. But anyway, I wanted to get the shameless plug out there. Go to www.texaspolicy.com for all of our materials, these shows, any of the research we put out, commentary, and the like, as well as sign up for the newsletters that Brian would beat me about the head and neck region if I did not mention. But I'd also like to introduce our guest today, who is Stan Gerdes, Representative Gerdes from HD 17, sits on the Energy Resources, Licensing, and Administrative Procedures committees, but also a little committee called Calendars. You know, I think
might be a little bit important.
I think what they do is they just release like a calendar every year. You know, it's like the commemorative calendar. That's to my understanding. But sir, really glad you're here and welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to getting into some of those topics for today.
Well, and unfortunately, though, we have to start out, you know, obviously we're in the midst of a special session, so we'd be remiss as journalists, because anyone can call themselves that these days, we'd be remiss as at least podcast hosts not to ask the controversial questions up front. So, HD 17, the southernmost part of HD 17 includes Caldwell County.
That's correct.
I got to ask you a very tough question. So, you're walking the streets in Lockhart, got $15 in your pocket. Get a little rumbling in your stomach. What are you doing?
Well, you know, that is the barbecue capital of the world. And I am proud to represent the barbecue capital of the world. And I don't know if I'd get voted back into office if I started playing favorites in the barbecue space. Now, you have to remember, not only do I have Lockhart, but Lee County over in Lexington, there's a place called Snow's Barbecue as well.
Oh.
So you're not going to have a bad meal down in Lockhart. I can guarantee you that. $15 might not get you the full meal, but you can start there.
Well, I'm going to have to say, and I mean, this might be a controversial take unto itself, that asks the same question, Andrew. I'd probably go, if you're going for the more traditional Texas barbecue experience, Black's is probably the, you know,
it's the OG.
Yeah, it's the OG. But I'm saying, like, look, if you're like hyper meat focused, I'd probably be a Kreutz guy.
That's a solid pick. Snow's has been on my bucket list. I haven't been yet, and I just need to get down there. It feels like a pilgrimage almost.
I live north, and I still haven't been to Interstellar, so I mean, I was about to say, I think it's one of those things where even if you just went by Texas Monthly's barbecue list and tried to work your way through, you know,
it's the only good issue of Texas Monthly.
Or not, to be fair to our friends at Texas Monthly, the ones where they personally attack James Quintero is always a good one.
I always like that. Yeah.
But folks aren't here to hear about barbecue. I mean, some of them
might be.
Some of them are, yes. But
let's just make this a barbecue show from now on.
Right, we could do that for episode 100. We're at episode 96 right now.
Hey.
I do want to say, though, so Representative Gerdes, really appreciate you joining the show, but I think we should establish, before we kind of get into the more policy-focused questions of this discussion, really kind of like what led you to office? You know, what was kind of your political or policy trajectory? And, you know, basically walk us from there to here.
Yeah. So I started with Governor Perry as an advance guy, back in 2012, 2013, and worked my way up with him, shut down the governor's office when he left, and then was with him on his second short-lived presidential run, stayed on with him in a personal capacity, and then moved to D.C. when he became Secretary of Energy.
Awesome.
He and I spent 3 years in the first Trump administration at the Department of Energy, traveled the world, traveled the country, got to see some really neat things that the Department of Energy does, especially with our 17 national labs that are across the country, and the innovation and what kind of innovation that they partner with and bring to the public. And some of that stuff we won't see for many years. And then after that, we moved to, my wife and I moved to the Smithville, small town outside of Bastrop, about 4,000 people. And that was right at the end of 2019. And then COVID hit. And so, Smithville, rural area, and, we were still able to talk with our neighbors. And it's kind of like COVID didn't really come out there, but it was in all the big cities, and it stopped. I was still on with Perry at the time, so it hindered a bunch of the travel that we had planned. And moving to a small town, as we all know, local government affects your life in more ways than you think. And having worked under President Trump and with Governor Perry as long as I did, I call him governor now that we're back in Texas. I wanted to get involved, and there was a open seat on the city council, and so I ran for the Smithville City Council. And ended up getting on there, went through one of their budget cycles, and just saw how confusing that process is for the normal citizen. Wanting to make sure that the spending, we weren't spending on things that we didn't need. Wanted to make sure that the police department had what they needed. But, there's a difference between needs and wants when you're looking at a small town budget, and any budget for that matter. And anyway, so got on there, and then John Cyrier, my predecessor, stepped down, and state rep wasn't on my radar, and ran, in a 5-way primary to get here 2 cycles ago. Just finished up my second session. I guess we're on in our 6th special session since I've been elected. And we've done some great things, which we'll get into in a little bit, and I'm proud of the record that we have. But kind of the genesis of all that is being under the tutelage of Governor Perry, and seeing how he led and managed and surrounded himself with the folks that he needed to, that told him the honest answers, whether he liked it or not. And that's kind of what I've tried to build and bring into my office and the team that I've put together, and I believe that we've been very successful in that mission. And
you actually preempted my next question. I was going to ask kind of who are those political North Stars for you, and I can't echo that sentiment enough about Governor Perry. That was so you were leaving office, or he was leaving office just about the time I was getting here and interacting with kind of the folks in his office who were kind of in that 2014. Post-regnum, if you will, and just, I could not underline more the thing about Governor Perry, and this is an absolute crazy, is knowing when you're not the smartest guy in the room, because there's somebody that's always going to tell you they're the smartest guy in the room, and understand that that's not an insult at all. That is a management feature, that if you understand that you're not the subject matter expert on any one of these things, but you have a skill at putting the individuals who need to be there where they need to be, that in and of itself, I think, is one of the best
and that's why sometimes we reach out to you guys, because me or some of the folks on our team, we aren't the smartest folks on every subject matter that comes across our desk, and so we rely on the experts that can give us the information that we're seeking out.
Well, on this show, Sir Flattery will get you everywhere. So, so I actually would like to jump into kind of a policy discussion, and Andrew and I'll kind of go back and forth on this.
Sure.
But I want to just go right to the top level. One of the things that you've definitely got I would say you're definitely in up to your knees in, and I would say that as a double entendre in this case, is the water issue. And I mean, obviously, we see leadership from you, we see leadership from Chairman Harris on this, two rural representatives. So what is kind of the state of water policy currently in Texas? What do you see its trajectory being, and what I would say are maybe some canaries in the coal mine that we should start considering?
It's a great question. There's not a meeting that I take in the district or, now at the Capitol that water's not somewhere in that conversation. Started with me as a homegrown issue from the district that I represent. We've got a serious problem in Lee County where the drawdown of the aquifer caused by the pumping in Burleson County in a different GCD is substantially affecting the folks in Lee County. And that's the Vista Ridge project that pipes billions of gallons of water from Burleson County, which I represent, down to San Antonio. And one thing led to another. We started into the water space. Our first session, I was not a water expert. I'm still not a water expert, but I care. And the water bills and the water legislation that we've worked on and are working on, a lot of it is homegrown and brought to us by folks in our district. We do have some pretty good water experts in Bastrop and Lee County because they're have experienced the problem or are experiencing it. And we worked hand in hand with them, brought them in through the process, helped us draft the legislation and going through the committee process. And it's not going away. My district, the 5 counties I represent, they're getting squeezed from the city of Austin and other demands at the piping. And the export is where we have a big problem, as you can tell from the hearing on July 15th that Chairman Harris had. He invited me. I'm not on Natural Resources Committee. I mean, as many times as I was testifying before the committee, some of the committee thought I was on their committee. But I was in that hearing, and that's really kind of spearheaded and brought to light some big, tough issues that we've got to work on. In the first special called session, Chairman Harris filed a bill, about rule of capture. Obviously, there's going to need to be a lot of work done on that, and we're not going to be able to tackle that in a special session. But it's starting the conversation. Obviously, Senator Perry is been working with us hand in glove, and that's going to be the interim project as we move forward. But what we got done this past session, some of these bills that I did are kind of niche bills and are statewide, but all stem from issues that they're experiencing for the people that I represent. And that's important, and that's what a representative is supposed to do.
I want to go back to your experience with the Department of Energy. One thing I've been watching with a lot of interest is the move toward nuclear and some of the innovation that's occurring with small modular reactors and those things. What do you see is the future of nuclear energy, particularly as it relates to the interaction between states and the federal government?
Well, Governor Abbott is one of his goals, obviously, is to put Texas in the epicenter for us to be the advanced nuclear epicenter of the country. Now that we have an administration in place, a Secretary of Energy in place that is favorable to actually moving down this route is very good for not only the country but the state. And we're some years away from the commercialization of this, but we have to start somewhere. I mean, we have great universities here to supply the workforce and the the knowledge needed. We have manufacturing capabilities. Texas is primed to be that and make us the nuclear spot, and we need it for our energy with the data centers, the AI, and all that we have coming. I know we've had to turn projects away in Bastrop, Caldwell County. We have big projects going on in Milan County, and we just the baseload energy is just not there to sustain what the need is right now.
Yeah, and I think that's a really. I mean, it's kind of funny how everything circles back to water, and
It
then
really
everything
does. I was
circles
just
back.
thinking the same
And
thing.
everything circles back to energy as well. But I think you hit a hit it now right on the head, and I think that your experience is definitely felt. You know throughout. I live in a mud in north central Austin. And one of the issues going back to about even 10 years ago was, are we going to look at like aquifer storage and things like that? Simply because, being reliant on, as most regional places are, being reliant on water or Austin to distribute the water, it kind of, puts you in a bad spot when it comes to, any sort of autonomy. Now, that was also back in the day of unilateral annexation and all that. So, the tables have righted a little bit. But I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the work that you've done in government and transparency. I think HB 119 is something that we'd be remiss not to talk about. So which one that bans lobbying compensation from foreign adversaries. Tell us a little bit about what put that issue on your radar and the kind of approach that you've chosen to attack it.
I mean, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, why would we don't need our foreign adversaries coming in here and trying to manipulate the system? And if we can stop it, slow it down, prohibit it, then let's do it. And so this was a RPT priority, and when I heard about the idea and then talking with some folks, I said, well, this is a no-brainer. I mean, anything we can do on our foreign adversaries to prohibit them playing in our sandbox, if you will, let's do it. And we also to come back to the foreign part of this, it goes back to water. When we were looking through all, we were on the prohibiting them from buying land, but the water rights is something that we found that wasn't included.
Oh.
And so we filed legislation on that this past session, but we didn't move that bill because I believe it was Colkhorst and Hefner, we got it put into their pieces of legislation. So there were no reason to move that bill if we could get it included somewhere else. And so, when you're working on different things, then you start figuring out other loopholes or rabbit trails that folks can use to get around it, and we try to stop that on these folks coming in and trying to meddle in our business.
Well, you definitely appreciate that particular work.
Yeah, absolutely. On the local government front, you had a bill, I believe it was House Bill 1522, requiring local taxing entities to post their agendas and their budgets in advance, bringing more transparency to what you rightly said was a very complex, difficult to understand process for the average taxpayer. Talk to me about the importance of transparency and ways that we can really rein in some of these local governments. I mean, I live in Austin. I have to deal with the Austin City Council. And
we have room for you in Smithville.
Ooh, I might.
Don't threaten him with a good time.
That sounds much more appealing. But how do we get these local governments under control, which really are the major drivers of taxes in Texas?
Right. Well, on this particular bill, and then we'll dive into that in a second. This was one that I came up with from my experience on a small town city council. When you get your materials Friday at 5:00 for a Monday meeting, the ordinary citizen isn't gonna look through it. They might look at the agenda, or they might look at it 5 minutes before they walk into the meeting, if they do at all. And not to mention the council has to review it. And so when I was on council, I asked multiple times of our city manager, hey, can we just get this a day earlier, 2 days earlier? Oh, well, that's a lot of work, extra work on the city staff and TML. It's by the rules and so forth, so on. Pushback, excuse, and so forth. I didn't get around to filing it my first session. We filed it this session, and it's good for everybody, for the folks of Texas. I mean, this is a statewide bill. And just last night, I was scheduled to speak at the Smithville City Council special called budget workshop against their tax hike. But I was on the floor, passing the maps. My wife spoke on my behalf, and I did the same thing last budget cycle with 3 cities in my district, all of which rolled back their tax rate to some extent. But the Smithville is back again with a 15.26 tax rate hike. Not to mention some of the stuff that was cut out last year's budget is back in, and one of the bonuses is double what we cut last time. And so, and we brought a lot of attention to it. Smithville, we had over 120 people show up to our city council meeting when I spoke last cycle. City of Elgin almost didn't let me in the room to speak. We had a constituent in there saving me a spot because she knows what kind of games that city manager was playing. There was, I counted, there was 37 people in that room. They wouldn't let any more people in it. Capacity of 37 people in a city the size of Elgin. That's double the size of Smithville. I mean, that's ridiculous. And that's one of the things that we're going to be working on is local spending. What I've found in kind of starting down this tax hike tour, if you will, from last budget cycle, is we've got a small town city manager problem. They you know, say that they're working with the city council, and some things are already baked in, and then it's a pressure. You know, a pressure game on the city council, trying to make sure that you know, I get you could take care of the city employees, but you know, a couple of cycles ago you give them a 16% increase, and now you're back with 3%. I mean, it is literally making it where, I mean, Smithville is taking out another $3 million debt note. It's not sustainable. And what do we do about that? So that is, we've got a bill filed for the 2/3 and voter approval. People need to, you know, have a say. And when you have these city managers that are just basically pressuring the city councils, and when you don't have a city council that's educated on what the process is, and you know, they use the deadline. Of hey, we got to have this by this date, or we're kind of SOL. And the budgets, I've gone through a lot of budgets. They're still confusing, and especially when you're pulling it out of the utility and general fund, you got percentages here of this and different departments. I mean, it is. I mean, you can make it look however you want, but folks, you know, don't have time to look at it. They trust the folks that they elect to make sure that they're holding the city manager and everybody accountable. So the city managers are, I'm not saying all the city managers are terrible. We've got some great city managers in the area I represent. After I went to the Elgin tax hike, it was a month or two later that their city manager was fired because in that meeting that I was at, he basically threw his hands up and said, "I'm done. If y'all want to cut whatever, but I don't see anything else to cut." Well, if it's a budget, there's still stuff to cut.
Yeah. Right. It sounds like, and I don't want to belabor this point, but it sounds like at the very least within some city managers we have almost like a cultural misalignment. I'm not just talking about like, you know, like with Texan values, but I mean with simple arithmetic, because I mean, you know, for this, and you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about, well, it's, you know, an increase here, increase there. Now, sir, you're going to have to forgive my ignorance of Smithville generally, but did every resident in Smithville get a 17% pay raise this last year?
I don't. That seems pretty steep.
But yet, the city council is looking to go into their pocket for 17%. That I think is just. It baffles the mind, because I don't know what would justify this lockstep increase in spending that we're not just seeing in rural central Texas. We're seeing this all across the board. Everybody seems to be. I know Austin's talking about a Vader right now, and you know they would rather just add to the debt or add to, I would say, add to what's coming out of the pockets of the taxpayer before do a simple audit on some of this. You know, we could do an entire separate show on the Austin homeless approach.
My gosh, yeah.
But I want to be respectful of your time, sir, and so I want to kind of move on. And we may come back to this if we still have a little bit of time later. But I want to talk a little bit about public safety. And then, you know, you mentioned earlier your tutelage under Governor Perry. Governor Perry was always a very, very thoughtful guy on criminal justice issues, and that's the issues that I worked with him most on. But I also found that the way he kind of viewed the issues of public safety was like I said, very thoughtful. It was one that it was not soft on crime by any means, but he did kind of see the human, the redemptive value in folks that break the law. But he also saw that there needs to be deterrence, that there needs to be punishment that is guaranteed to happen. That goes all the way back to Jeremy Bentham, back in the 1800s. But I want to talk specifically about HB 2017, also known as Grayson's Law, which increased penalties for intoxication manslaughter when the offender is here illegally. Can you tell us a little bit about the genesis of that and how that came on your radar and how that can be?
Yeah, this one is near and dear to me and the Bastrop community. Grayson Davis was a constituent of mine who I knew. He and I had a few cold beers together from time to time. Just a man's man outdoor. I mean, he was, I don't know what tool he didn't have in his pickup truck. Avid duck hunter, just an all around genuine, nice man. He was hit on a Sunday evening by a drunk illegal alien who'd been previously deported twice.
Oh my gosh. Twice.
It was over in the Cedar Creek area, and when it's frustrating when somebody has one, no regard for our laws, who are not here legally, and have a repeated behavior because one of his deportations was alcohol related. So, what do you do? I mean. Ashley and Todd, his parents, he's got two other sisters and a brother, and so I made a commitment to them that we are going to try to figure out a way that one, we can remember Grayson, and two, make a difference. Yeah. But also understanding that you've got to have, if you're going to tell them you're going to get something done, you've got to get it out of the Texas House. And when you're talking about increasing penalties, illegal immigration, folks not here legally, that's a tough hill to climb when just given the makeup of what we've got in the Texas House. And so we went to work, and we found that we wanted to increase it to a first-degree felony. We wanted to have a mandatory minimum of 10 years, and so anyway, I had a bill on the floor, and I went, and some of the folks on the other side had some points of orders that were about to basically just kill the bill. I postponed the bill and worked with some folks on the other side, and they actually we crafted it in a way that we still got to where we were going. It was stronger, and the governor signed it into law, and Senator Hagenbu helped me on the Senate side. And, it was right before, so about a week after Grayson was killed, Donald Trump came in to Austin and did a little press interview at the Austin airport, and then went over and did Joe Rogan.
All right.
Oh, it was that week.
Yeah. And in the press conference that he did at the Austin airport was about illegal immigration, and it had a big sign, his backdrop said, "Deport them now." And and so when I found out he was coming, I reached out to Brooke Rollins, and within 15 minutes she'd got me I told her the story, told her what I wanted to do, and she connected me to the folks on for the Trump campaign. And when he came to town, we had a private meeting with the president. Wow. And told him the story, and he invited them up. He said, once I get into the White House again, I want you guys to come up to the White House and have lunch with me. Wow. So we haven't done that yet, but it's still on my list. And beautiful family. It was a heartbreaking deal. But folks with repeated bad behavior, no regard for our laws, we have to do something, and this is one of the things that we were proud to carry and get to the finish line.
Well, I have to tell you, sir, inside baseball stories with a happy ending is pretty much, about meat and potatoes on this show. And
There's a lot of inside baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll tell you though. I've only been so fortunate as to eat lunch at the White House in the Navy mess once, and they had meatloaf sandwiches like the president's mother used to make.
Wow.
And it was, let me tell you, I can tell you it's the best meatloaf sandwich I've ever had. I can't tell you how many I've had. Probably not all that many.
I'm going through my memory banks.
Your Rolodex of meatloaf sandwiches?
Yeah, had meatloaf.
Yeah.
We've heard a lot lately, especially during this special session, about people's values and voting your values. Mm-hmm. There seems to be an increasing divide between urban and rural areas of Texas and the values of those areas. I feel like we are still Texas. We're still Texans, but you're starting to see some of these rifts develop. And you had a bill that I think highlights that. House Bill 4086, Stop the Slop, which is an issue that I didn't even realize was going on, where cities like Austin are offloading food waste into rural counties and basically just taking the junk that's produced from restaurants and the slop that people throw away and just dumping it out in rural Texas.
Right.
How is that illustrative of this dichotomy between urban and rural Texas?
Well, off the bat, one of the reasons they are looking out in Lee County, obviously, land's cheaper out there right now than it is in Austin. And Austin is the only city in the state of Texas with a URO, Universal Recycling Ordinance. And these folks bought some acreage out in Lee County, and we're going to put in this composting facility. And I'm not talking about mulch for your garden composting. I'm talking about the slop, the carcasses, all the food waste that these restaurants are mandated to
the stuff
get
that stinks.
Exactly. Yeah. And be on these heaping mounds. It'd be like what the judge and I've called a buzzard farm out there.
Oh my gosh.
And so in the process with TCEQ and the notification process, it wasn't a permit process. It was just notification process, which was a whole nother deal. And so what we have is the encroachment out into our rural areas from these urban areas of bringing the slop, the crap. And Senator Colcourse and I worked on this. We'd worked on it for quite some time. And the citizens of Lee County, when you have a county of that size and have almost 2,400 public comments on an issue, that is saying
struck a
something.
Nerve.
Yes, it did. And we tried to get a public hearing, a public meeting with TCEQ, so the public could just kind of hear what's going on. So, and we weren't getting it. We submitted some 3 different letters. We'd met with the executive director, her and I both. And the citizens of Lee County stepped up, and they are still going at it. I mean, there was an article in the paper, I guess it was yesterday that it came out, that the Break It Down is the LLC. They have businesses here in Travis County who also have multiple TCEQ violations. So why would we want somebody that has a bad track record even coming out here, not to mention the crap that it's bringing with it. And we wanted to be able to stop the slop. And knock on wood, so far we've been successful at doing that.
That's great.
And we only have you for a few more minutes. We know you have to get to the floor today. We don't want DPS coming around here looking
for
you.
Do you dream about that bell that they ring?
That's a good question.
If I wake up in a nightmare situation or something, you have that bell going off,
I figured it would be the cue to turn him into a Manchurian candidate or something like that. But sir, with just the few minutes
Hats off to the bell ringer, though. I mean, they do a good job.
Dedicated.
Yeah.
Wait, is it? We got to blow this open.
Is there an actual person?
Yeah, we got to blow this open right now.
It's the button underneath the front mic. They hit it.
I just assumed it was you hit it once and then it plays two or 4 pairs.
Do they just hold the button down, or are they keeping that rhythm, that ding ding?
I think it's I don't know if they hold it down or if I think they've got to toggle it. I'm not sure.
That's impressive rhythm if they have
I'll have to go look at the button today.
Breaking news. You're only getting this kind of inside
That's
baseball.
the 100th episode guest. You got to figure out who the bell
bell
ringer
ringer
is and
is,
bring
yeah.
him in for episode 100.
We're gonna get the really tall bill clerk to come in here too, because I know that guy's got those stories.
The real tall guy he does the bell.
There you go, Jefferson. I'll start getting the show notes together. All right, that actually that is something I always wondered. But I did. So we only got you for a few more minutes, and I just want to make sure that we hit on this because I think it's very important, even given the stuff we covered. So put aside some of the bills we've already talked about. Put aside what's kind of going through and looking good in the second special. What unfinished business do you have from the 90th, and what would you like to see us go in from the 89th, and where would you like to see us go in the 90th?
First and foremost is local taxation and spending. Mm-hmm. That's going to be a tough one to climb. I'll be working on that. We've got to protect a lot of the folks I represent, elderly, fixed income, just hardworking Texans that don't want what we do at the state level to be clawed back by their local government.
Right.
First. Second is we have more work to do on the water. The rule of capture in the interim is going to be a tough pill to work through, and I'm looking forward to doing that with Chairman Harris and Senator Perry on the water side. And then I'm the underground facility safety. I know this sounds kind of crazy. Chairman Darby appointed me chair of the underground facility safety subcommittee, and we hadn't started our work yet because we've been working on special sessions. Mm-hmm. And this issue of I didn't know that our water lines weren't included in the 811 call system. The one call, the water lines aren't included. Some are, but not all. It's not, you don't have to be. Mm-hmm. And I just looked at it because I've heard there's been some issues out in our area where we got a lot of things going on out in Bastrop and Milam down in Caldwell County. And when these lines get hit and knock a water line out for these rural areas, it could be out for a day, a few days. And so serious. I couldn't believe that no one knew where some of these lines are, especially with all the excavating that we have going on. And we kind of kicked open a bee's nest on that deal. We got a lot of pushback. And so in the interim, we're going to be doing a study, not a study, but working through how can we find some common ground and incorporate that, because I think if you have a pipe in the ground, infrastructure in the ground, you need to know where it is.
Right.
And so that goes back to local accountability, and that is another thing that we're going to be working on the infrastructure side of things.
Well, Representative Gerdes, you've been very generous with your time, and I think that I think your chief's about to come in with the giant hook and yank you out if we don't cut here. But really great talking to you. Hope to have you back sometime soon, and even better, I hope me and Andrew will do a district visit where we can audit the Snow's place, make sure everything's above board.
We'll do a good study for you.
We'll start at Snow's and just have a progressive barbecue down through Lockhart, and then you need a nap after that.
Yeah, I was going to say hopefully you got hardware stores down there that sell wheelbarrows. So.
That's right. That's right.
Welcome back to The Right Idea. Appreciate you sticking around. Andrew, that was a great conversation we just had with Representative Gerdes. And I feel like we did talk a lot more about barbecue than I had planned, but having completed that interview, not as much as we should have.
No, we could have done probably an entire segment on barbecue, and maybe we need to have him back and really dig deep into the intricacies of Lockhart barbecue.
Yeah, and look, I'm fully willing to give Lee County and Snows its flowers as well. But
have we ever had a Right Idea remote?
We have not. In fact, we've actually talked to Jefferson. Now it's going to take him like 3 hours to set up. But I figure the pitmaster gets in early, so
why not?
Yeah, exactly. I think we're pushing on an open door, trying to convince Jefferson to do a remote from a barbecue place. But anyway, wanted to get into some of the news lately. Obviously, there's still a lot going on with the second called special. Mm-hmm. We're recording this on Thursday morning, so yesterday just passed the maps. I think there'll be plenty to say about that with the folks who are kind of in that fight in due time. But kind of looking more broadly around the state, I think we're also, in approaching September 1st, we're starting to see a lot of these laws that went into were signed into law during the 89th regular now starting to take effect. But
you've got constitutional amendments on the ballot You know?
Oh my good! I was about to say, and I believe, some meaningful ones too, not just within the area of tax reform. But we'll delve into all that later. But I want to talk about more like what's happening now outside of the legislature. We just saw, I think it was yesterday, perhaps the day before that, West Texas A&M. Notably, their president, Walter Wendell, put a drag ban or a ban on drag performances, in the school.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, and I mean, it is an interesting question because I think that when it comes to the content, people of our sensibilities are not. Are not too concerned about that, but it does get into an interesting area about actual content-based regulation of free speech.
Right.
And I think that's a tough question. So drag bans generally, is it something that you can tailor a state law? And I'm asking you this as the vice president of policy. Can you tailor a state law where that particular activity is banned? Because you and I have seen the hearings as colorful. We'll say as they've been, that tend to address this. It's always about like, oh, well, you would prohibit Shakespeare, you would prohibit, X, Y, and Z, and all these kind of, ludicrous examples, as that would justify, being able to, gyrate luridly in front of children.
Right.
How do you square that circle?
To me, it always comes down to time, place, and manner. Right. Adults, if they want to go to a drag bar and be entertained, fine. But if you're saying...
That's also private property.
It is private property. Exactly, right? What we're talking about with these public schools, whether they be K through 12 or institutions of higher education, these are schools that the taxpayers are funding, right? The state, in a direct or indirect way, is giving its stamp of approval to things that go on in these public areas. Now, when you're looking at K through 12, you're looking at kids under 18. That to me is a slam dunk, right? Kids should not be exposed to this. We should not be forcing this on children, which is really what is happening with these activist groups that are putting out these drag queen story hours and all of that. It's about forcing a worldview onto people, not persuading people. When you get to colleges and universities, okay, you don't have the problem of kids are quote unquote underage, right? They could go down, across the street to the bars and, go to one of those shows if they wanted to. But you have the problem of this is on the property of a state-funded institution. In many cases, the funds from that state-funded institution are supporting that activity on campus. I think it's entirely reasonable for the state to say, this is not consistent with the purpose of higher education.
Do you think that perhaps that this approach would fare better, say, if it wasn't an administrative decision by an individual president of a university, and say a actual law that was created and passed by the legislature?
Yeah, I think so. I haven't read the opinion from the Fifth Circuit. I'm still a little actually surprised that the Fifth Circuit would strike
James
this
Ho
down.
dissented, so I mean,
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, if you have a uniform law passed by the legislature that says no state-funded institution of higher education can allow this on their property or can provide funding for it, yeah, I think that would survive scrutiny. I think it's probably the right way to go about it. At the same time, institutions should be free to govern themselves. I went to Baylor University, which is a private university, right? So I think they would probably have a little bit more leeway as a private and affirmatively religious institution, although they've made some decisions recently where I'm like, are we straying from the religious piece of this? But I do think institutions should be able to make these decisions. What I like about what's going on at West Texas A&M right now is they are really shifting back toward we have lost our way as universities broadly in doing our primary job, which is educating young people to become the future leaders of Texas and America, giving them the ability to continue and build upon the prosperity that they've inherited. And we're doing it through DEI, intersectionality, these random classes. I saw an infographic the other day on Twitter about the strangest classes at each one of these universities in Texas. And it's like, interpreting
the one that said
hip-hop.
like beer appreciation
Yeah.
for university. Let's
Which,
say,
I mean, that was...
I mean, can you audit that class or is it pass fail?
I feel like I did that class in my spare time.
Do they accept infield practicum experience? We'll deal with that. But another thing that popped up is I would say the cell phone ban. You know, I'd love to say friend of the pod, but unfortunately we haven't had her on yet. But Representative Caroline Fairley, who's a friend of, I know, at least Ariana's pod, you know, really kind of is the youngest legislator spearheaded this. But what we're seeing now, as school districts are struggling or, you know, failing to adequately implement, I didn't say failing to adequately implement this, not really understanding what the law is doing and not necessarily reading some of the guidance that's been put out. You know, we're seeing these pieces in major newspapers that talk about, oh, well, you know, this is poorly executed. It's like, first of all, this bill was voted and signed like 3 months ago. So,
and it was heavily negotiated, too.
Yeah, I mean, y'all can miss me with that, but more importantly, we're starting to see like some of the actual pushback now. I think I saw somebody start a petition, you know, because as you know, a valid way of changing Texas law is change.org signatures.
Oh, absolutely. I was shocked that they discovered the veto by petition loophole.
Well, even funnier about that though, if you actually look at the petition and some of the signatories to, the English is just mangled. You know, it is just the petition itself and the signatories there too made the compelling case that you need to have your cell phone away.
When you sign a petition in emojis, you probably have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. No, let's not delve too much into that because that's how Jefferson's contract is structured. We don't want to.
And wingdings.
Yeah, it's one of these signs, and of course, we're talking about emojis and doing visual representations. Great pod, in other words, for the audio listeners.
It's a video pod.
Yeah, that's true. It's as you can see, we have a lot of folks that do go on the video route.
Yeah.
Do want to say though that I think I'm justified in saying that the cell phone ban is here to stay.
It's the right policy.
It's the right policy. There might be a tweak or two here or there, but I think largely what we see is what we're going to get in this particular case. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And I think part of what you're seeing is kids who are used to having their cell phones, who quite frankly are addicted to their cell phones, are going through withdrawals.
They're shaking it out.
They are. They're lashing out because this thing that is such a ubiquitous part of their lives that's in many ways just attached to their hand all the time is going to be taken away from them for a short period of time in the overall scheme of the day, right? I think one of the key things about that bill that I thought was a really important bit of language was it's during instructional time, right? The cell phone has to be put away during instructional time. That is exactly when you should not be on your cell phone, when the teacher is actively teaching you, right? There is no reason for somebody to be on their phone. And I bring that up because one of the objections that comes from parents very frequently, which I understand as a parent, is the safety issue, right? Yeah. We see the school shootings and various things that happen, and parents are afraid of what if I can't get in touch with my child and something bad is going on.
That is a single order analysis as I see it.
It is. Yeah. And I mean, there's a bunch of different ways of looking at that. Like, yes, I do understand that. However, you know, when I was growing up, we didn't have cell phones in schools, right? You could still get a hold of your kid. You call the school, they send a note, the kid comes down to the office, if, you know.
Or Ferris Bueller pretends to be your dad. And
right. Yeah, oh, yeah.
Exactly.
We did that all the time.
Since we're talking about our generation.
Our generation.
Yeah. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think some of the safety concerns are way overblown because even if followed to its, you know, the most horrific end of, or the most, I would say, the largest end of that, and you're saying, oh, well, what if there's an active shooting? You don't want to have a phone of it. You know, a phone is not going to immediately stop that situation.
Right. And it could make it worse, right? I don't want the risk that my kid's hiding somewhere safe and their phone goes off and it alerts to their location.
But not only that, but it also takes up tower space. You know, it also takes up bandwidth on the tower, hurting interoperability. We've talked about interoperability of disaster response many times here on this show. So I think that it's just it's here to stay, and no amount of I think it had 138 votes for it. So I don't think any amount
pretty
of
substantial. I think Representative Farrelly had enough co-sponsors before it even got to the floor for it to pass. Another thing that about this, before we move on, I was talking to our colleague David Dunmoyer about this very issue yesterday, and he brought up a really interesting point about parents who want to be in touch with their kids at all times are actually doing their kids a disservice. You are
absolutely.
helicoptering, you are inhibiting your child's ability to grow and develop independence if you feel like you have this tether to them all the time. It's almost like an electronic, the harness leash that you see some parents walking.
Oh, the little monkey backpack of Italia.
Yeah. I mean, it's that, but in electronic form.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, and so that no amount of public misspelled messages I think is going to change that. One last news item before we hit the survey says and go about our business. So one of the things that I think a lot of people don't appreciate or haven't appreciated as much, specifically in Northwest Travis County, is obviously with the floods there was a lot of damage, a lot of disaster. Out by Camp Balcones Springs, off the Farm to Market Road up there, Cow Creek, the bridge that goes there is like a massive thoroughfare. Otherwise, if you're coming from Austin and go into that particular part of Marble Falls, you basically have to go up into Liberty Hill all the way around, and then go what to happen to be a closed road.
It's adding 45 minutes to an hour to folks' commutes right now.
Commute, perhaps, commute, But I was saying, during the weekend, probably. But you're at least adding, because you're talking about that. You're probably talking at least a half hour, right? And anyway, so they got the bridge rebuilt in record time. The storms were, like about 2 months ago now, not even 2 months, a month and a half ago now, and they already have it rebuilt. That just begs the question then, if certain rules and I would say procedures and practices were able to be suspended in an emergency situation, why are they rules and practices and procedures to begin with?
No, exactly. And I think you have to give credit. And James Quintero's going to probably bust through the wall and harm me when I say this. You have to give credit to...
Second James Quintero reference today.
He's a popular guy today. But you do have to give credit to the local government in this situation, right? They prioritized a need of the taxpayers, and they made sure that it got done, and got done quickly. I don't think you see that very often, especially in Travis County, of responding to the actual needs of taxpayers. Whatever happened this time around, I think you're right. Why do we have some of these regulations that bar the development of infrastructure that's clearly necessary and cause it to take multiple years when you can build a bridge in the span of less than 2 months?
I was about to say, don't tell the folks in Baltimore that. And if I'll tell you, I thought, I know there's a lot of nitpicking here or there, but I have to generally say, from just what I'm most, I think Judge Brown, County Judge Andrew Brown, no relation, has done a pretty good job of managing the disaster.
Yeah,
I know he's been out. I know he's been out to the sites within the county several times. So
he has done a great job.
So I would be remiss not to mention. So we get to our final segment, the survey says segment, which I believe Brian has contractually obligated us to put in there. I just want to take it really quick from the top. So you saw last week that President Trump has taken over Washington D.C. By activating the National Guard. Now, we don't need to bring into the fact that the city of D.C. as a municipal entity is wholly a creation of the federal government. We don't need to take into account that
it's entirely legally justified.
Yeah, we don't talk about that stuff here, but we don't need to talk about the fact that that there is actual statutory permission for what to happen here. What I thought interesting, and then you lived in D.C. I've been to D.C. on business enough that I might as well have declared residency there. Crime is bad and has gotten worse recently. And then you're going to get all these people out there, but it's, I feel safe. It's like as they walk past their doorman in their luxury apartment building, all that. We are starting to see this. A poll done by the Washington Post, 69% of respondents said that they strongly oppose. And as you know from the front mic, if you strongly oppose a bill, your vote gets counted as 2 nays instead of 1.
Oh, that's true.
So this is a similar phenomenon.
I think
here.
That checks out with parliamentary law.
Yeah, exactly. You would know. And so anyway, they strongly oppose, 70%, 69%, 70%, strongly oppose his decision to take over the Washington Police Department, despite actually having produced some tangible results very early on. Let me ask you just first and foremost, is this a red hat, blue hat thing?
To an extent, I think it is, but that 69% strikes me as pretty high, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, why?
That's at the tip, too. That's strongly opposed.
That's strongly opposed, right? So you are pulling from folks that would probably otherwise support other things that the president is doing. And I'm just guessing right now, but some of this could just be the optics. Some of it could be the pictures, the videos of military vehicles and soldiers walking around the streets of the nation's capital. Right now, if you've lived in D.C., that's not necessarily that uncommon. You know, the Pentagon's right there, right? I mean, on my commute every day on the metro, filled with folks in fatigues, going to and from their jobs, working for the military. I think the difference here is you actually have a very clear presence of the ability to use force that could be just making people feel a little bit uncomfortable. That's off the top of my head is the guess why you had that such a strong response to the strongly opposed. But
well, I was about to say, I think that this probably belies more of a rift between an elite public opinion and, you know,
and you'd have to see who they were asking. Are they just asking people who live in the DMV area?
Well, no, they're probably doing, and let's, you know, absent a suitable sample frames, they're probably like asking people who visit WashingtonPost.com to weigh in. And online polling in that regards as a complete, well, far be it from me to disparage other survey methodology. But anyway, Andrew, that about brings us to the end of the show. Really glad that you were able to take time out of your day, talk to us. Glad you were able to help with, talking some of the policy with Representative Gerdes. So that brings us to the end of The Right Idea, and really appreciate my mustachioed colleague over here.
Always like being on the pod.
Well, I'd say we're going to do a super pod one of these days where we get all y'all, you, Brett Johnson,
Let's go.
all the friends of the pod. But until then, we are going to say adieu, and as Brian always butchers, in the words of Sam Houston, do good and risk the consequences.